In 2003, BBC Radio Wiltshire, as it was then called, joined the National Restoration Campaign by spending a day with the Wilts Berks team, travelling from the Oxfordshire border to the junction of the canal with the Kennet Navan at Semmington. This is the third of a series of abridged recordings of the day where BBC presenters Mark Seaman, Anna Quarrendon, Dan Chisholm and John Marshall uncovered the story of the Wilts Berks Canal.
BBC Radio Wiltshire.
We're here at this secret location. And we're in an area where there's quite a bit of restoration potential, if you like, where a lot of buildings could be potentially restored. There are lots of places all throughout the county, but this place has got its fair share.
It's all about Wiltshire. BBC Radio Wiltshire.
BBC Radio Wiltshire with Mark Seaman.
BBC Radio Wiltshire.
Paul Jones, Manfred Mann and Pretty Flamingo. They've had a bit of change of personnel over the years. Mike Darbo. Dan Chisholm, you write a few songs, Dan. Do you know Mike Darbo?
Yeah, I have. I used to work with him some years ago. In fact, 10 years ago, I worked down the road in Gloucester, and he was doing a radio show out of there at the time. Yeah. And so, yes, I got to meet Mike and have a bit of a chat, but we never attempted to write any music together.
He's quite an unassuming guy, though, isn't he? Because I knew him when he was down there as well. And he used to do a regional radio programme. And you think, gosh, this is a former lead singer of Manfred Mann, and he was just into his radio programme, and he's just very unassuming, I thought.
His most interesting moment for me was when he said to me, he said, out of all the songs I wrote, which one has made me most money? And most people will probably say Handbags and Glad Rags as being one of the most recent successes again. But do you know which it was?
Go on.
It was the advert, "A finger of fudge is just enough." That brought him in most money, apparently. That bought the house.
I think you say, though, since Handbags and Glad Rags have been recorded by the Stereophonics, he's probably grateful for that one now. Yeah. Anyway, here we are out and about today, and Dan and I waffling on about pop songs and all this, when we should be restoring the Wilts Berks Canal, because that's the aim behind today's programme on BBC Local Radio. Of course, it is the BBC's Restoration Summer. Let's come back now to Vic Miller, who's director of the Wilts Berks Canal Trust, and also David Walker, who's the Experienced Corps volunteer animator. Vic, one of the important things here, we were talking about volunteering and with David as well, but actually you still need money, you still need to raise funds. How do you go about doing that?
Well, in the earlier stages here at Wootton Bassett, we were dependent on local grants from the Town Council, the Carnival Committee, and also local fundraising effort. But in more recent times, we've been very fortunate in being able to get a lot of benefit from the landfill tax credit scheme. The companies who are involved in it with us are like Biffa Waste Services through their Biffa Awards scheme, Hills Waste Services, Crapper, and also Viridor.
So do you go down to the local library and trawl through all the appropriate trusts that you might be able to blag some money from?
Well, yes, we have a fundraising committee now who are specialising in this, and we're getting a lot of grants from hitherto unknown sources that we hadn't realised until we started investigating it. And we have one lady, Hazel Smith, who's doing all this for us and coming up with several thousands of pounds from different sources now.
And David, in a way, that's another role, isn't it, within volunteering, and fundraising is hugely important. And again, it's not necessarily a full-time job, but oh so essential.
No, it's crucial, and probably one of the most common demands from organisations I come across is for fundraisers. And they're a breed apart, fundraisers. I mean, could you do it?
No, absolutely not. I know, I have a friend of mine, and he does do it, and I just stand open-mouthed, because it is just the most incredible skill, isn't it?
It is indeed. I mean, personally, I run a London Marathon and I raise funds for a charity, and I do my meagre bit, but it exposes my lack of ability in doing this, and I take my hat off to them. They are a breed apart, and a rare breed as well, I'm afraid.
What about something like the Wilts Berks Canal Trust? Because clearly, I mean, that's a fairly large organisation. They'd be looking for somebody, I guess, Vic, with reasonable skills. David, maybe somebody who's retired from professional fundraising or whatever. They need to bring something to the table, don't they?
Yes, they do. And harking back to my organisation, Experience Corps, that's precisely the sort of people we're looking for. People over the age of 50 with life experience, life skills. They may have had some sort of connection in their career, and might now just have a little bit of time that they can spare to lend a help to this type of organisation.
Yeah, Vic, what sort of money do you need to generate each year? Have you any idea?
We're talking about millions, actually, in the long term. But
a lot of that will come through trusts. And,
absolutely, yeah. We've had engineering studies being carried out in the past 2 years at various locations, and the amount of money this has cost is about something like £180,000, and most of this money has come from the RDA, the Rural Development Agency, and other government organisations like that. We've also had contributions from local authorities, and also money raised within the Canal Trust itself has gone towards it.
But again, without those all-important volunteers, you would still struggle, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, it's very, very important for us to have dedicated people who are working on this, on fundraising. We've got a small committee at the moment who are very successful, but they would also always welcome new faces with new ideas as to how to go about it.
One of the things that occurs to me, David, is also about volunteering, is that especially something like this on the Canal Trust. I mean, by the stretch of water we are here today, clearly that wants renovating it a little bit. If you play a role in that, whether it's through fundraising or just physically helping, next time you walk along you think, yeah, there's visual proof of what you've been involved with.
Sense of pride, sense of seeing an end result to your efforts. Yes, absolutely.
What about just to talk for a moment about fundraising and so forth, and money? Is that where the majority of your requests come from for volunteers and volunteering? Because I'm also of the opinion that actually what happens is we're looking for a lot of people just to get money, and that's not what it's about either, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, it is a key role. I mean, certainly I'd say a fair percentage of the organisations I'm dealing with require that sort of support.
Everybody needs money.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't sort of odds that. But no, I mean, it is a common enough request, but there are an awful lot of other things that one can do. We mentioned earlier, maybe just simple admin. But no, it's one of many types of things that are required in the voluntary sector.
Yeah, and just finally, Vic, you were saying also that maybe you're not as physically fit as you might like to be. Again, helping the administrative section, helping with that fundraising, hugely important to the overall restoration of the canal.
It's an essential part, because without it we would not be able to exist. We've got to have the people who are the doers, the people who talk to people and communicate with people, and to organise the publicity side and the fundraising, and there's so many different aspects of it as well, and even the social side as well, because it mustn't be all work and no play. Yeah. We'd like to have a social side in the Canal Trust, and that has to be organised.
Well, again, if you want to know more about the Wilts Berks Canal Trust, you want to get involved in fundraising, you want to know more about volunteering with David and his team, then you can get in touch with our CSV Action Desk. Remember, we're putting together a pack about today's programme, and indeed about the Wilts Berks Canal Trust and the canal itself as well. And you can get all of that through our CSV Action Desk on 08000 922 944. That's 08000 922 944. 12:15. Talking of generous people, here's somebody whose wallet is constantly open when it comes to getting around in. Dan Chisholm, Mr. Generous.
Well, it's very nice of you to say so. You haven't got any cement, have you, at the moment?
Cement? Oh, hang on.
Just a minute.
No.
I'm just moving these stones around because we're... well, my bit of the building of the wall hasn't quite been as successful as I'd like.
Bricky Chisholm, is it?
Yes, it appears to be the case. We're actually just about a mile or so out of Cricklade, and to the south, and on the road which runs back towards Purton, if you know that, in the north of the county. How can I best explain this area to you? Well, it's beautifully green. There's a lot of traffic going by, and you may recall on the breakfast show we were talking about the big row that's going on down the road, the Chelworth Industrial Estate, where they're talking about the chemicals coming in the containers, and everybody seems happy about it apart from the local residents. Phone lines on the breakfast show went completely mad as a result of us talking about that. We're literally just a stone's throw away from that particular site, on the other side of the main road, where we can see the restoration work which has been going on here at the canal, and they've been doing some work here with an old aqueduct, and they've been trying to do some restoration work which seemed like the tallest order I have ever seen. I say that because I have been here before just a few weeks ago, and to look at the work which they have done here, it's the volunteers who were just literally giving up their time from their work and taking unpaid holidays, if that's the way to do it. They actually came along and literally volunteered on the hottest days of the year to reconstruct the bridges here and the stonework, and literally get involved with clearing the area. Still a lot to be done here, but it has to be said they've made some great progress. Well, with me here is Hilary Sharman, who is Honorary Secretary of the Wilts Berks Canal Trust, also involved with the...
No, sorry, the Cricklade. The Cricklade
branch. Thank you.
Yes,
that's all right.
That's all right.
That's all right. I'm happy to stand corrected. You've got so many titles, though. I mean, you have so many hats on your head at once. I don't know where to start. No. But being involved with the Swindon and Cricklade Railway Society as well, and also having an interest in leisure in these parts as well, you must be so thrilled to see that this is all now starting to take shape and come together.
Oh yes, yes. Well, we just like working here for its own sake anyway. But being involved with the railway too, I can see the wider picture. I've been a member of the railway for about 20 years, and they're really getting on well now with the going over the River Ray for the first time on Saturday the 20th. I'll give them a plug, and that's at 2:00, by the way. The atmosphere down here is wonderful, even in the middle of winter. You came to do a broadcast in the hottest time in summer, but our workers have been here through thick and thin from December 2000, with a short break, well, quite a long break, due to the foot and mouth. None of the canal groups could work during the foot and mouth crisis.
And when you mentioned all the work they've been doing, I mean, as I say, as you look down to the area where we can see evidence of water, I mean, there are so many rushes, it seems like there's so much to be done, and yet they have done so much.
Oh yes, 70 tonnes of mud and debris have been lifted by hand from the aqueduct, just by means of a hoist with wheelbarrows. Others have taken the wheelbarrows away full of this very heavy mud. My daughter belongs to the trust, and she's very strong, but she thought that she could do this work, but she couldn't.
Well, when I was here, because if I may interrupt, just away to our left, just as we're standing on the aqueduct at the moment, where the scaffolding is on the other side there, we have people in the base, actually in the water, filling up buckets with the rubble, which were then taken up by a hydraulic hoist. And it had to be physically done that way, didn't it?
Oh yes, yes. And in the middle of winter too, it's no joke. I mean, it can be freezing cold, but they're always cheerful. I mean, if anyone would like to join, you'll find a very cheerful crowd with refreshments available, even though we have to sit outside with a little old occasional table. We've got chairs now, all the mod cons.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the leisure side of this, because, I mean, obviously there's so much which you can focus on. You mentioned the railway, obviously, the train ride, but this is good area for walking, it's good area for cycling and so many other things too.
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, there are plenty of footpaths here already, but when this was complete, we've got to think long term. I would like the footpath to be paved like the Swindon one, because I had a walk recently along the footpath from King's Hill to Old Town, which is about 1.5 miles, and I was amazed how many people use it, especially since it's been paved, and it's so suitable for wheelchair access and scooters, you know, the disabled scooters, because there's so much building in Swindon that I think it's very important to have a quiet place to walk. And there was a lot of fishing going on there. Well, that's what I look at and think, well, it's going to be like that here too. We must think long term. Well,
you must be also casting an eye to in mind of the news that we were hearing this morning on the breakfast show about the future developments, you know, in the Cotswold Water Park and all the rest of it. I mean, you want to be on target to be alongside that and enjoy and spin off the back of their success, I guess.
Oh yes, that's right. And we've been canal enthusiasts for a long time. We've spent many holidays on the canal. And that was one of the reasons why we first joined, because we thought it would be lovely to have this waterway ring incorporating the Kennet and Avon, the Wilts and Berks, the North Wilts, and the Thames and Severn Canal, and all linking up with the Thames.
Well, Hilary, it's a long-term planning thing, but it will get there eventually. It's very nice to see you in the sunshine as well. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's your BBC Mid-Morning Show, and we're across the county. Don't forget, Graham Seaman's here with more on Restoration Day coming the other side of 1 o'clock. Here's a nice new song, very original, from Rachel Stevens.
6 minutes past 12 o'clock this Friday. BBC, your local radio station, with Dan Chisholm, Anna Quarrender, Mark Seaman, doing their bit to restore the Wilts and Berks Canal. Although I feel a bit of a faker, Anna, because we haven't actually done any work. Every time David Walker comes and talks about volunteering, we're not actually doing any.
Well, he does kind of look us up and down and, where are your galoshes? Where are those gloves? What are you actually doing? Well, we're talking to a lot of people who do a lot.
We are, including two people who do an awful lot. Chairman of the Trust is Tony Davey, and also Director of the Trust is Vic Miller. And you wanted to put something to Tony, didn't you, Anna?
Well, yes, before we talk about messing about on the canal, I just want to ask Tony about somewhere where we shouldn't be messing about, because while we were talking just now, you mentioned to me, Tony, a place which I'd never even heard of. I'm sure I probably should have done. Wooden Basset Mud Springs.
Yes. They're just behind you in the trees.
Well, just literally, probably not more than a couple of 100 yards away, a group of trees, and somewhere where we shouldn't be going.
Oh, yes, it's very dangerous. They're very deep holes, effectively, full of mud, and it's just oozing up from the bottom and spilling out at the top. So it's rather like those scenes you see in the old Western movies where...
Like quicksand.
That's right, you got it, that's the scene. You just sink in, you can't get your feet out, and you just go down and down, very slowly, though. It takes 5 or 6 hours.
Are these springs that are common type?
No, they're unique. They're the only ones in the world.
So Wooden Basset has a world-renowned mud spring. It's not like a spa. You can't go there and get a mud bath.
Definitely not.
They sound as though they should be preserved. Is there some sort of preservation order on them? Or?
There's a fence around them, and they are, and they're a site of a site of special scientific interest.
Yeah.
Dangerous territory.
Would you like to go and have a wander through them?
Well, that's one way of getting rid of me. Right, that's it.
All right.
I'm off.
Now, chaps, boat owners both. Tony, you got a boat?
Yes.
What have you got?
Well, I've got a part share, effectively like a timeshare, in a narrowboat, a 55-footer.
How long have you had that for?
About 4 years.
Vic, you used to be a sort of a timeshare or part share, but you've got your own now.
I've had my own boat now for about 5.5 years, but I used to have shares in a shared ownership scheme for about 9 years. But my boating interest started way back in the 60s, when I used to take parties of scouts on trips on the canals, and I have to think back of the number of youngsters that went on these trips and probably laid the foundation for a canal interest going through their lives.
I have a horrible suspicion this conversation is going to deteriorate into boys and their toys. We've got Tony and Vic, who both already boast boats, and Mark Seaman, who wishes he had one.
Well, you can go off to the mud, but if you want, Anna. Tony, interesting, because you've got a background in the RAF, so you've gone from sort of fast fighter planes and what's it, a much gentler, serene life on the river. What's the fascination with boats for you?
I think you're right. I think it is a lifestyle thing. You just sit on the back of the boat and wander along. Most of the canals have got a speed limit at 4 miles an hour, so you do about 3. And it's a very natural speed to move, and you just watch life go by, and you notice things like the damselflies people were talking about earlier, and water bowls and wildlife generally, and you can feel yourself unwinding as you sit there on the boat. After a couple of days, you're chilled out.
What's the attraction of a narrowboat over other forms of water transport? You could have another type of boat.
You could. Narrowboats are a reasonable size, got a reasonably powerful engine, and consequently they're quite comfortable. They've got fridges, showers, decent flush toilets for the ladies. You can keep your beer cold.
We can insult her, but don't get too sexy. She's got a mean right hook, Tony, I tell you.
Yeah, well, at least she's got rid of all the blackberry juice. No, it's very comfortable, living environment which you can move around with you.
And you can actually, I mean, I know that you guys sort of, it's leisure and pleasure, but you can get residential permits. You can actually live on these boats as well, can't you?
Oh yes, some of them are people live on, particularly in London, and it's much cheaper to buy a narrowboat than it is to buy a flat in London.
Equally, they are still quite expensive. I think if you're buying a new narrowboat nowadays, they quote you something like about £1,000 a foot. So if you want a 40-50 foot boat, that can be serious money still, can't it?
That's right. It's it builds up. The more that you have on the boat, the more expensive it is. The boat that I've got is a 26-footer, and it cost me just over £30,000. And but the advantage of it is it's made from aluminium, and I can trail it. I have a trailer with it as well, and which means that I can visit various parts of the canal system by towing the boat, and I don't have to cover the same area of canal all the time.
Equally, one of the things that does occur to me about this restoration project is, I know myself inquiring about a boat, one of the difficult things to do is to get a mooring, because they are fairly limited. Again, if we can get more canal restored in the Wilts and Berks, that's got to be more useful, Tony, to getting more people on the water as well and helping with those moorings.
Oh yes, this is actually one of the big problems of the canals at the moment. The Kennet and Avon's got, I think it's 8 boats a kilometre. Now, when you think that the boats are typically 50 to 70 feet long,
not a lot of space, is it?
It adds up. And they've got a waiting list for moorings on the Kennet and Avon. The result is inevitable. Where you've got a shortage of anything, the price goes up, and typical price on the K&A for a year would be about £1,200.
Yes, but still, and it's a good form of income as well. So again, once areas like the Wilts and Berks are restored, it's kind of self-perpetuating, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. There is no point in restoring it if it can't survive in the future. It's got to be sustainable. We've got to create something that will carry on going.
What about the logistics, Vic, of running a boat? I mean, you've got a boat. You've talked about the fact earlier in the programme that it's a bit poorly at the moment. I mean, you can't just nip into the garage like you can if your car's on the road. Is it complicated getting a boat serviced?
Very much so. My breakdown occurred on the Thames at Oxford, and fortunately there was a marina right by where I was at Osney Lock, and I was able to retrieve the boat on the trailer and bring it back home to Devizes. But that could have happened out in the middle of the Thames, miles from anywhere, and what I would have done then, I have no idea. But it just horrifies me that as the circumstances that could have risen under the, but as it was, it worked out all right.
I suppose cars break down as well.
Exactly, yes. I mean, cars, but we haven't got the haven't got the AA or the RAC or the like that available. There is a breakdown scheme on the rivers and the canals, which we can draw upon, but that only just provides the financial support.
On the subject of finances, Vic, if you do get fed up with your boat, either because it's not performing properly or whatever, does it depreciate a lot when you come to resell?
Certainly not the type of boat I've got. They're selling at the same sort of price that I paid 5 years ago. And steel boats have a bit of a more deterioration rate, but the average life of a boat is 15, 20 years, and providing they're looked after properly, they should maintain their value extremely well.
Good. Chaps, thanks for talking to us. Clearly an invitation for more to get involved with boating, and especially restoration here on the Wilts and Berks Canal. It's 26 minutes to 1 o'clock. Let's have some music. Here's Neil Diamond.
In Malmesbury, Bratton and Corsham on 104.3 FM. It's all about Wiltshire.
The concept of having the Wilts and Berks Canal in this particular part of Swindon, or on the fringes of it, is a little uncomfortable for me as I stand right now on the banks of the canal itself. Well, you can't actually see the water for the amount of rushes and things that are in there. And what's more interesting is the fact that the turning alongside me is for Purton Road, where the road goes off to Cirencester, off to the north, and North Swindon, or to the town centre to the right. So if you live in the Tor Hill area or Haydenwick, you know, roughly speaking, where we are on the outskirts of Swindon. And yet, with the noise of the traffic, the overhead power lines, and all of this greenery around me, I can see the wildlife is thriving. Red admiral butterflies up in the trees, up in the distance there I can just see. But that's about it, because there's not an awful lot else left around here, Ken Oliver, but an awful lot of work that has to be done.
This, I think, needs just a little bit of imagination, Dan. We have a canal here, the North Wilts Canal, which has been dug out, but hasn't got a water source at the moment. So during a dry summer, of course, the canal bed has got down to fairly low levels of water. And one day, very soon, you'll have a vision here like you've got at West Lees, that there will be a canal in water. There's a lock just round the corner waiting for gates to be put on it, and then about another mile out to the aqueduct, which will also be in water.
But you've even actually got the bridge under the orbital way, which is good.
Well, this is a most exciting thing. We've been talking about Council's commitment to the canal. Here, as part of a planning development agreement, this is the first new bridge on the canal for about 100 years, the Purton Road Bridge, and it's been built with the cycle track and footpath as part of the bridge, and the culvert which will take the canal into Swindon one day very soon.
You must have almost like nightmares, I would imagine, at the potential difficulties you face in dealing with local authorities to try and get the permission to do what you want to do.
Very helpful, all the local authorities. They were 50-50, I suppose, in the first place, but as everybody sees the potential of the canal, they want to be helpful, they want to help us, and they do just that.
So the plans in the building work already getting into Swindon, even though the canal's a long way off. Timescale? Be bold.
I would guess that within 15 years you'll see most of the canal restored. I've got this thing in my mind that the canal was abandoned in 1914, and 2014 would be just an interesting date to hang a hat on, as it were.
It's a great idea. It's just such a shame that we can see the bridge that's carrying the road over to our right there has already had the tag merchants, those who've been the graffiti artists, have already decorated the walls and spoilt the view.
Yeah, we've yet to see the shopping trolleys, but I'm sure they'll follow, unfortunately, but we'll do our best to make sure that it's kept clean and tidy.
Don't tempt fate. Ken Oliver, thank you very much indeed.
BBC Radio Wiltshire. Travel. Trowbridge, Corsham and Malmesbury on 104.3 FM. BBC Radio Wiltshire.
Do you know, I thought I was looking at wildlife by the canal, but it's Graham Seaman who's going to be on. Are you all right, mate? 1 o'clock this afternoon, yeah? You've been messing about on the river much?
I've got the picnic basket. I've got everything here, mate. What do you want? Egg mayonnaise or chicken salad?
Oh, yeah, lovely.
Be all right,
and Kelly's got the kettle on?
Yeah, it's great.
I think I'll stay this afternoon.
Yeah, okay.
Tough job, this, isn't it?
Yeah, very hard.
Coming up to 12 minutes to 1, BBC Local Radio with Dan Chisholm, Mark Seaman and Anna Quarrendon doing our bit for the restoration of the Wilts Berks Canal. It's all part of the BBC's restoration summer, and Dan's on the move at the moment. We'll have a natter with him in a second or two. Can I just remind you, tomorrow is a very big day in the life of this particular radio station, because we're having our open day. It's at our broadcasting house studios in Swindon, Prospect Place in Swindon. If you haven't heard us talk about it, we'd love to see you there from 10 o'clock onwards tomorrow, right throughout the day. I know Anna and I will be showing people around the building. We can't wait for that. Dan's going to be showing people how things work in the studio, which would be novel because I've never seen him understand it yet. But there's plenty to see, so do come along and have a look around BBC local radio station tomorrow and enjoy your time with us, and we'll see you from 10 o'clock onwards. That's at our broadcasting house, Prospect Place in Swindon. We'll be chatting to all sorts of people. Anna's found a man to talk to now, but why am I not surprised?
Ah, yes, lots of men around here this morning. Actually, I'm interested that so far we've been talking to lots of men. Is it only men who go about in boats, Frank?
Certainly not.
Frank, I would have to say here, is the publicity officer for the Wootton Bassett branch of the Wilts Berks Canal, and you've come along here really just to see what we're all doing.
That's right, yes. Looking after our little patch here.
Now, is it just men who are interested? Have you got equal members, male and female?
There are lots of female members, and we always welcome more ladies.
Yeah, a bit of brawn there. Now, you've mentioned also camps along the way here. We were just having a chat and you said that lots of working camps along the length of the canal. What sort of numbers do you get coming along to lend a hand and put their shoulder in?
Well, we have camps that are organised by a waterway recovery group. They come along in masses, up to 24. We've had, several weeks ago, there was a camp here that had 24 members from 2 different branches.
Well, a fantastic summer this year. I mean, the weather must really have helped in making progress on restoring the canal.
Yes, in many places we've had camps supported by Waterway Recovery Group, and they've in their work they have provided so much interest to other people that's noticed that we are actually operating.
When you say camps, do you mean that they literally come and camp, or are they working parties?
Well, they're working parties, but they also come from very distant places, like London, for instance. London work quite often came here, and they excuse me, they actually camp down in mass on the floor of their local scout hall. So that's where they find themselves.
Do the Scouts get involved too as a group?
The Scouts have been involved. This year we had Scout groups come along. Vic Miller and myself were pleased to invite the Scout groups, and we had a lot of interest from the Scouts themselves.
And you also had a lot of interest because you've just been away for 10 days to the National Waterways Festival, I believe. Where was that held?
That was held at Beale Park. I was one of the members of a Waterway Recovery Group that helped supply all the ancillary services that the National Waterways Festival need from the IWA.
So lots of different parts of it all. It's not just actually being here messing about on the canal. There's lots going on behind the scenes with lots of supporters. Thanks for joining us here, Frank, this morning.
IWA, is that the International Waters Association?
The Inland Waterways
Inland
Association.
Waters Association. I was saying international, isn't it? Bit of canal boating around.
Yes.
All right, Frank, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I think Dan is out and about. We'll be talking to him fairly soon. He's been racing off with John Marshall. Time now, though, is 8 minutes to 1.
So back with the mobile end of the Wilts Berks Canal unit, and here I am now walking along a pathway. I've actually lost track of precisely where I've come because we've been round in such an enormous circle. We sort of came along to Wootton Bassett and then turned left by the Sally Pusey pub and then went down a track road, and then we've come along and I can see the houses of Wootton Bassett in the distance, but I can also see the work that's been going on with the locks. Summit Lock as it's known, and Alan Porter used to be a lock keeper on the Thames years ago. But you look mighty fit, I must say, Alan, with your bike.
Yes, I'm quite fit for my age, thank you.
Well, tell me a bit about locks. How do you, simplistically, can you explain how they work?
Yes, a lock is really an oblong hole in the ground, which is brick lined on the bottom and the sides, with a lock gate, one on these locks, just a single one at the top or the higher level, and two gates at the bottom for the lower level, because you need two at the bottom. When the lock is filled up, you get a greater pressure of water. Essentially, a lock is just a lift to raise anything that floats from one level of water to the other.
Well, that's all a very wonderfully simplised description of it, but what I can see in front of me here is not what I'm accustomed to seeing as a lock, because it looks like newly brick built, and it looks like there's some wonderful work which is going on here. Can you describe for me what's happening?
Yes, we've taken about 2.5 years to rebuild this Summit or Chaddington lock, and a brand new tail bridge so that the farmer can get his equipment over to his other fields, because before there wasn't a bridge at all. Now, 2.5 years seems a very long time, but you have to realise that we only come about once or twice a week, and sometimes we do have work parties for a week, which progresses the work enormously. But you know, I myself can boast that I've mixed up most of the cement and concrete that have gone into the brick facing that you can see.
Well, you're one of the fittest, you see. Yeah. That's obvious. I mean, you with your bicycle here.
Maybe.
Are we able just to walk round there? Because as we walk alongside here, I've got one of those construction site fences, which is just on my left-hand side, and we're just going to come round past the radio car to follow the pathway round. He's just left his bike there. My word, he's sprinting as well now. That's a little faster than I could do. We're just coming round here because this is a remarkable piece of work when you consider that, once again, I mean, this looks like this has been done by master builders and craftsmen.
Well, our Bricky Ron Robertson was a professional bricklayer all his life, and so he's done most of the bricklaying, and
Here we are.
the ones that try and keep up with him haven't got a chance, but slowly but surely other people do add to the lock walls and the bridge. But
and as we look into the basin from over this bridge here, which we can tell the bricks are still here and they're putting them in place, but there's a lot of work which is going down below us in the basin there.
Yeah, well, most of the wall you see is complete. We just have to finish off the top edges of the lock that you can see on this left hand side, and then when this side's done we'll move over to that side. The piece at the top of the lock, in other words on the Swindon end, that will all be put in behind the walls and made up and eventually grassed over, so to make it look reasonable.
Finally and briefly, can I just ask you, how long do you think it's going to take for you to get all that clearing done, because it seems like a massive project? Do you reckon
probably within the next 6 months when here the vinyl lane.
Really? That's
the whole the canal, yeah, maybe another 10 years.
Yeah, I fear so.
But the people who waited 40 years for the K&A to open, so we're just
it'll be worth it, won't it, when we get there? It will. It's very nice to talk to you. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for sprinting. You know, especially I'm so glad you're so fit, because I must say that you moved at a frightening pace, even for dare I ask how old you are, sir?
Yeah, 75.
Yeah, you're moving a bit faster than even I must say. But very nice to meet you, and thank you very much indeed, Alan Porter. Thank you. So that's how it looks this end. We're almost at the end then, Mark. It's sort of raced by, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been really good, and we must thank, of course, Ian, our engineer, our programme producer, Emma Cooper. The studio production's been by Ben, and our canal programme coordinator overall, John Marshall. And of course the three of us have had the tough job of standing in the sunshine and talking about rivers. It's not been bad, has it?
I've just been told, standing on this bridge, I should be able to, if I jumped up and down, I should be able to see you. And I'm just looking down the line of the canal here. And I can't see. I can see some
hang on, let me see if I can come to somewhere. You might be able to see me. Can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me?
What are you doing, Mark?
No, you can't.
No,
I can't see you either.
No. Fat lot of good that was.
I've run off. Give myself a heart attack now, running too fast.
At your age, you should know better.
Thank you all very much.
See you, mate.
Cheers. Ta-da.
In Trowbridge, Cheryl, Market Lavington and Box. 104.3 FM, BBC Radio Wiltshire.